are glad that you are all here, especially the newcomers. In keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, we ask all who participate confine their discussion to their problems with alcohol. And by group conscience and keeping with our first tradition, anyone disrupting the meeting either verbally or physically will be asked to leave until they can attend without creating further disruption. And now, the moment you guys have been waiting for. Irish Mike came into our lives in Stockton about 5 years ago. One of his sponsees is from the group that used to be by the Alano Club, Stephen. And so that's how I met Irish Mike. He had came to do Saturday Night Live for us. And he's been a friend ever since. And so when I saw him last year, I said, when I do meetings, I want you to come. And then he goes, well, you got to go to Stephen first. So Stephen had seniority. So Stephen, get Mike here so we can have him. I need to get him in over at Persian group. So, he's got seniority, so I had to get sloppy seconds.
Oh my God!
It's in a good way now today. So, Irish Mike is going to share his experience, strength, and hope with you guys, and he promised for some new material this morning. So we're coming back again to hear him from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Mike, take
All
it
right.
away.
Good morning. My name is Irish Mike. I'm an alcoholic.
Good morning.
That was quite the intro. I don't think I've ever had anything quite like that. That's funny. If you don't like what I have to say, blame Stefan. Thank you, Alicia, for setting this up and asking me. I was going to get you flowers, but the light turned green. No, I really honestly feel so blessed to have someone like her in my life. And, you're such a kind, caring, compassionate soul. And there was a reason why we met. I know that. So, hey, I want to thank whoever came last night to come out and see me again. I know that I'm looking out here. There's some heavy hitters out here, a little extra pressure. Gotta get this thing together and see if I can not repeat myself. That's going to be difficult, but I'm going to give it a go. One of the things that Alicia asked me to do was, for years I've been writing a morning reflection and sending it out every morning. And it's got a life of its own now. I send it to about 200 people. By the way, individually, after I pray for each person. It's part of my morning prayer routine. I tried sending it out as a group text and it just didn't work for me. It just didn't go into my heart like that. So I said, no, I'm going to go back to sending it individually, praying for each person individually. And then those 200 people sent it out to 200 people who sent it out to 200 people. And now it's got this thing, right? And how did it all start? One of the things that I try to practice with my sponsees is have them do mind, body, spirit. It's the original circle and the triangle. We have our circle and the triangle, unity, service, and recovery, right? But it started from the ancient symbol of mind, body, and spirit. So mind is read or write something program every day. Body is do something physical every day. By the way, sex counts. Preferably with somebody else. And spirit, we pray and meditate. But the mind, the mind part, I had a hard time getting my sponsees to read or write something program every day. So I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just start texting them a quote, because over the years I had been collecting all these quotes and all these cool things that we say in the room. Alcoholics are very clever. The way we kind of express things, it's just, I just love it, It's just like so profound, but so, and it's clever, it's funny, and boom, boom. And so anyways, I had been collecting these for years. So I started sending out just the quotes in the morning to my sponsees. And then I started writing a little ditty on it, maybe a couple of 3 sentences. Well, those couple of 3 sentences turned into 4 or 5 sentences, which turned into a full post. And that became a nice discipline for me. And if you get that, you know what it's like. What I always try to do is to always put a little hope in there and a little recovery. but always to touch on what it was like, because I don't ever want to forget how bad it was. It's been 37 years since my last drink, and even 37, almost 38 years. So it's been a while. So we need to remind ourselves how bad it was, because we are only just, one arm's length away from a drink, one fix away from that dance with the devil. So it's good for me. It's a good discipline for me, and I enjoy the. It's nice. It's just nice in the morning. But I got to tell you, it's a lot. I used to do it all that morning. That was a lot of pressure. That took about 2 or 3 cups of coffee sometimes, just to get the inspiration to do it. And then I realized, you know what? I better start doing this beforehand, at least prepping it. And that's what I do. I prep it beforehand. The day before, I kind of fine tune it, and then the morning of, I just do the last edit, and off it goes out into the world. And it's been a great experience. I've met so many amazing people. So many of you have told me that, oh, I get your post, and quite honestly, I feel naked when I hear that, because you know a lot about me and I know nothing about you, right? But it's a beautiful thing. So when I was thinking about what I was going to say at this meeting, I thought to myself, well, I do collect all these quotes. So I just put in my search of my quotes, God. And I pulled up a whole bunch. And I was going, oh, that's pretty cool. And I just wanted to share some of those with you. Life is fragile, handle with prayer. God answers an email. What if we woke up today with only those things that we thank God for yesterday? What would you have? So one of the things that I do is and I did mention it last night, and I'm going to repeat this one because we have a newcomer. I do little things to keep me right-sized. And whenever I find change on the ground, I pick it up and I thank God for my sobriety and everything that I have today. And that way I thank God every day, because I always have change. And I do have something for you, Paul. Welcome it, a little token of hope and faith and a little spiritual courage. So, if you can come and see me afterwards, I got a gift for you. Before I get out of bed, I ask God to enter my mind before I do. That's the truth. I don't even open my eyes. I just don't even. It's like, okay, God, enter my mind before I do. That's because if I don't, I'm God by 10 a.m. Right? You know what I mean? I gotta get things going. God can only do for me what He can do through me. Oh, I like this. If you ask God a question, there are only 3 answers. Yes, not now, and I have something better for you. And I always seem to get that last answer. I have something better for you, right? And if things don't go your way, we have a choice. We can bang the high chair and throw our sippy cup, have our little tantrum, that never helps. Or we can just adjust, adapt, keep moving forward, and trust that God's plan for us is better than our own. And He's shown me time and time again that His plan has always been better than my own. And I don't always like the way it unfolds, but at the end I go, I get it, thank you. Don't tell God how big your problems are. Tell your problems how big your God is. I'm going to kind of get into this one a little bit later, so I'm going to hold off on that one. Make your God bigger than your obsessions. Those who walk with God always find their true destination. Think about that. We don't always know exactly where we're going, but if we put the principles of this program into our heart and our mind and our soul, we will find our true destination. Get out of our own way. Keep putting one foot in front of the other, right? The next indicated step. God seldom becomes a reality until God becomes a necessity. Oh, this was interesting. Think back when you were in grade school, when you were taking a test. The teacher was silent, right? Already gave you everything that you needed to know to solve that problem. We just had to figure it out on our own. And that's the same kind of thing with God. He's our teacher. sometimes we don't hear it because he's waiting back or letting us solve that problem on our own. Because what do we learn? We learn from our own mistakes. At least that's what I do. You know, that's when it really, really sinks in. Oh yeah. Talking about the spirituality of the program is like talking about the wet part of the ocean or the round part of the basketball. It's everything. Oh, I like this one. Remember how we talk every night before bedtime? I missed that. Signed, God. Yeah. One of the many differences between me and God doesn't want to be me. I'm going to end with this on this thing. Don't use God as a pinch hitter. Use your best player the whole game. Baseball analogy. She's wearing her baseball outfit. She's going out to a game. When I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you guys this morning, and I didn't really get into it too much last night, was something that's near and dear to me, and that's the steps. I do want to have enough time that we can maybe do some Q&A, so hopefully we can get through this pretty quickly. But one of the things that I've seen in my experience that, it's they call it the AA waltz, where people come in, they get sober, they do the steps 1, 2, 3, and then they go out. Come back, do steps 1, 2, 3. It's the AA waltz, right? Step 1, 2, 3. Step 1, 2, 3, right? The 4-step hangs people up and sends so many people out, and it doesn't have to be that way. We complicate this thing in our own minds. You know what? I like the expression. How long does it take you to do your 4-step? 4 months and 4 hours. 4 months to agonize over it, 4 hours to actually sit down and do it, right? We do our 3rd step prayer on page 63, and right below that it says, next we launch out on a course of vigorous action. It doesn't say, next we wait till we're in so much pain. It doesn't say, next we wait till our sponsor tells us to do it. It doesn't say, next we wait a year. It says, next we launch out to a course of vigorous action. And the very next page, it gets a little bit more into it. It goes, though this decision was a vital and crucial step in our recovery and had little lasting effect, and was followed at once by a strenuous effort to face and rid ourselves of those things that blocked us. Alcohol is but a symptom. We needed to get down to the causes and conditions. So let me break that down to you. We made a decision, right? That's that decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God. How long is it going to last? It's not going to last unless we at once, what's the definition of at once? Immediately. So we do our 3rd step, we immediately do our 4th step. It's right there in the book. And we don't need to sit on this thing. And what are those things that block us? Those are those spiritual blockages in steps 4 through 10. We unpack that baggage, that all that life debris that we're carrying around that just keeps us from other people. It's a relationship blocker. It's a relationship blocking me from you, from myself, and from God. And I need to remove those things in order to have healthy relationships in my life. And the 4-step, it's interesting. I do it a couple of different ways. One way seems to work better than the others. I kind of go over the book with my sponsees, and then I send them off with forms that they can do straight from the book, with all the questions, so it's pretty straightforward. And, you guys can knock it out and then come back and we'll do the 5th step. Or, which most of the people will do, is I say, come over to my house Saturday morning, 8 o'clock. Plan the whole day. Go through the book, go through the forms. They start doing their 4-step. I sit right in the same area reading a book or doing writing or whatever I'm doing. If they have any questions, I'm right there to answer them. One thing that does help, I do have this really great outdoor living room that's covered. It's very, very spiritual. Literally hundreds of steps have been worked there between my wife and I, and book studies and, meetings there. It's a spiritual place. I almost have to experience it in order to, Stephanie knows what I'm talking about. Alicia was there too. So that's where we do the 4-step, and they'll do it. They'll ask me questions. I'll keep feeding them coffee, get them cranked up and fired up, and then we'll do the 5th step. Right then, boom. Right then, boom. And then we'll take it over to my fire pit, burn it, and send it back to hell where it belongs. Done. That takes anywhere between 4 to 6 hours tops. and it's over. And then they can move on to the steps 6, 7, 8, 9. By the way, if you do your 4-step correctly, you've already done your 8th step. Because the 4-step is broken down into resentments, fears, sexual inventory, which I wish they would have called it sexual/relationship inventory, because all those questions apply to relationships as well. And the last thing is the people we had hurt. And people often say, well, the people we'd hurt, that sounds like the 8th step. But if you look at in our book, in the bottom of page 70, it does say, we list the people we had hurt in our 4th step. And then later on, when it gets into the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th step on page 76, which all of those steps are on that one page, the beginning of step 9, it says, now we're at steps 8 and 9. We made a list of all people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And then the very next sentence is, we made it when we took inventory. That's the connection, right? So you can move through these things pretty quickly if you do it correctly, right? And in resentments, there's 3 languages that we should never speak: victimese, deniation, and blaming. Don't be a blame thrower, right? And what I've learned in this program is that no one can make me mad without my permission. If you make me mad, you've hijacked my emotions. You're living rent-free in my head, and you've conquered me. Today, it's like I realize no one can drive me crazy unless I give them the keys to the car. I'm not going to put my happiness in anyone else's pocket. That's it. You know what? And I love that there's, so many different things that we say about resentments, and, it's like me taking poison and expecting the other person to die, right? One of the ones I always like, and I was this Irishman with a short fuse out there when I was drinking and using, and I didn't have any tools for living. My only tool for living was a hammer, so I treated everybody like they were a nail, and that was a real problem. So I come in here, and I learned that I don't have to show up for every fight that I'm invited. I often say that to myself. Sometimes the best response to someone is no response. That drives people crazy. They want to get under your skin. And that's an interesting perspective. I appreciate that. Walk away. It's like, whoa, wait. We got to get into it. So that's resentments. And I love in our book, when it talks about resentments, being the number one offender, it takes more people out than anything else. And I've seen that. That's been my experience. I've watched it with other people. But, when it describes resentments, check this out. It's on page 66. All of these are descriptors: grave, fatal, to die, power to actually kill, and poison. Do you think they were trying to tell us something about resentments? Yeah. And then we talk about fears. And why do we talk about fears? Because fears control our lives and put our life in a box. And if we make decisions based on the fears, which is basically future tripping, we're not reaching our full potential. We're just not. We're living our life based on fear. That's why we have to list these fears, right? Worrying about the future doesn't take away tomorrow's troubles. It takes away today's peace. And the analogy I love is that worrying about the future is like paying interest on a loan that you haven't taken yet. Now think about that. Financially, would you ever pay interest on a loan that you haven't taken yet? Of course not. That's stupid, right? But emotionally, we do it all the time. Emotionally, we're doing it all the time. We're paying that emotional interest on something that hasn't even happened yet. I like what Mark Twain said. I've had many tragedies in my life, and some of them have actually happened. Yeah. And then the sexual inventory, and it's like, it says on there, we're not the arbitrator of anyone's conduct. You just write it down, you put it down. I always tell guys, categorize. One-night stands, I don't want to hear it all. Just one-night stands, prostitutes, whatever, strippers, porn, whatever, just put it down. Put it down. We're going to burn it anyways, But there's so many good things in that on page 69. I don't know if that was a coincidence that they put the sexual inventory on page 69. But there's, one of the things that comes up often is this whole thing about relationships your first year in recovery, or sex your first year in recovery. And there's nothing in the book that prevents us from doing that. But there's a ton in the book that talks about how we treat others. Right? Throughout the book, it talks about how we care for others with kindness and compassion. And it comes to that sexual inventory, there's 3 questions that are very important. And I always say, it's like, can I have a relationship my first year? It's like, well, if you can do these 3 things, can you be completely honest? Completely honest. Motive, everything. That's in there. Can you be completely honest? Can you be completely unselfish? That's usually the game breaker, because we're self-centered, right? You know what I mean? That means like give 100%, expect nothing in return. That includes sex. No wham bam, thank you, ma'am. The other person comes first. You have to be completely unselfish, and that's also the deal breaker for new people in sobriety. If you're dating somebody new in the program, that's pretty unselfish of you, because we all come in so broken. We need to repair, and it takes a little while for us. And to have a relationship interjected in that is going to prohibit us from actually growing and healing. That's the case. So, can you date your first year in sobriety? Yeah, but not with a newcomer. And then the last thing is create no harm. And if you leave that relationship and they have to make an amends, you blew it, right? But if we can do that in any kind of relationship that we have, be honest, unselfish, and create no harm, we can walk away with our head high. It might not always work out. Relationships fall apart. There's things that happen. But if you do those few things, you'll have integrity, you'll have dignity, you'll have honor, you'll be able to walk away. And you might still be sad over the breakup of that relationship, but you won't be stuck in grief as much, because your actions were right. And then they create no harms. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the 9th step. And the 9th step, to me, there's a freedom in the 9th step. But more importantly, there's forgiveness in the 9th step. Not only getting forgiveness from others, when we make our amends to them, but more importantly, we find forgiveness of ourselves. See, the God that I believe in is all loving, all forgiving. The second that I do something that he disapproves, he's already forgiven me. It's whether I can find forgiveness in myself. And it's so interesting, if the God I believe in is all forgiving, shouldn't I also conduct my life that way and be all forgiving to you? But we don't. Human nature causes us to kind of like hold on to those grudges, hold on to those resentments. And, there are things. How do you forgive the unforgivable? I had a terrible childhood. There was a lot of physical and mental abuse. Things that should not have happened to a child. How do I forgive that? And the thing is that when we forgive, we're not condoning a behavior. We're recognizing that we can't carry that cancerous hate in our heart. That I'm no longer going to let that person live free in my head. I can't. That cancer will eat me away. That hate will eat me away. When Nelson Mandela came out of prison after, being, basically tortured for 20 years, as he was walking back, he turned back and he looked at the prison and he said, I have to leave that hate and that bitterness behind, because if I don't, I'll still be a prisoner. Right? So, forgiveness. So, how do we get to the 9th step? And it's been my experience that the harder the amends, the greater the outcome. And, I wanted to just share some amends with you guys. So, I dated this girl from the age of 16 to 22. She cheated on me a lot, and it just broke me. Honestly, I'm kind of grateful to her, because she accelerated my bottom, and she also knew something I didn't know. She wasn't my person. As much as I wanted her to be my person, she wasn't my person. My person came later, right? When I was a little healthier, because that was a sick codependent relationship, quite honestly. But nevertheless, she broke my heart. I get sober. I am coming up on a year. And down in LA, that's where I got sober. When you take your birthday, you designate someone to come up and literally hold the cake while you blow out the candle. That's the tradition there. It's usually your sponsor. A couple weeks before my first birthday, my sponsor calls me. He says, Mike, have you made that amends to Jean? Matt, you know I'm never going to make that amends. That's on my never list. You know what? It's just too painful, man. You know, it's like, part of me still loved her, definitely hated her, and that was a kaleidoscope of emotions I just did not want to have to deal with. I said, I'm not doing it. He goes, okay, well, if you don't make that amends to Jean, then I'm not going to give you a cake on your birthday. I said, well, F you then. I guess you're not giving me a cake on my birthday. And then I thought about it. I said, oh my God, this guy saved my life. I love this man. He took me through the steps. He had a book study in his living room. We walked through the book line by line. You know, he started me in service. He took me on panels when I had like almost no time. He was taking me on panels. When by the time I had 90 days, I had my own panels. And it was that was such an important part of my recovery. I just love this man. I said, I got to suck it up. So I called my ex-girlfriend. By the way, I got married at 7 months sobriety, which I'm not going to get into, but I don't recommend it. Oh, my word. And she'd also been married too. So there's no agenda there. Like, I'm married, she's married, whatever. She even had a small baby. I called her up, let's meet. We met down at Venice Beach, and I stayed on my side of the street. Didn't get in anything that she did. I admitted all the stuff that I had done, which is quite a bit because I drank the entire relationship, right? And a lot of broken promises and things like that. And, it was interesting when I told her that I got into the program because my wife had started, when she was my girlfriend, had started going to Al-Anon. And then she goes, oh my God, there was something I could have done? And it was interesting. I saw the transfer of guilt. I didn't mean that to happen. I didn't want that to happen, but I could see that was happening. But then when I was walking off the beach, by the way, stay on my side of the street, don't get in anything they did, right? We stay in our hula hoop, right? So I'm walking off the beach. I'm walking on air, guys. I'm finally free. I'm finally over this whole thing. And here's the strangest thing that happened. I fell more in love with my wife. Why? I had to look at it. What I had done was I had built walls around my heart to protect me from hurt. And until I made that amends, that wall was going to be there. So by doing that, taking that wall down, I was able to love more. God will mend a broken heart, but you got to give him all the pieces. For me, all those pieces, including the amends to that person that I didn't want to make amends to. And I love saying that story because inevitably somebody's out there sitting there with some ex and some different state or whatever that they've been hanging on to these resentments that maybe it's time to book a flight and go out and make those amends. And if it happens, come and tell me that it happened, right? Another amends that happened. So let me paint this picture. I am. You know what? Yeah, I'll do it real quickly. I went back to school, got my bachelor's degree in sobriety, was working on my master's degree. I was already working full time. I was married. I was very active in the program. My plate was full, right? I bump into my old college swim coach that I had quit on when I had drinking, and told him, hey, coach, I didn't have you on my amends list, but I realized that I owe you an amends. I quit. You depended on me, and I just walked out, And I said, yeah, I'm a recovering alcoholic. He goes, yeah, I knew you had a problem. Threw up in the pool a couple of times. That. And then he dropped the bomb on me. He said, Mike, yeah, I forgive you, but, you still have eligibility, and I need a backstroker. You see, we don't get to make the terms. We got to make it right. And in order for me to make it right, I owed him a year of swimming. I look at him and say, Coach, I'll give you one day at a time. You know, I mean, literally, that's what I told him, one day at a time. So I actually did it. I showed up. And I hadn't swam in 10 years, guys. Compared, I'm just like, you know, I'm swimming against college athletes. It was just brutal. It was the hardest thing that I've ever done. I had to do the Serenity Prayer, third step prayer, and seventh step prayer over and over and over again just to survive these workouts. But here's the crazy thing. It didn't take long before I was faster than I was when I had left. You know, I was swimming higher powered. You know, I was swimming higher powered. It was amazing, you know. And then I got faster than I ever thought I could. Qualified for this championship swim meet and showed up there. And part of the thing, you know, like swimmers, we shave down or whatever. And so I'm, you know, walking around looking at all these guys, these young men, because I'm old, they're young, all ripped and cut up. And I'm just like getting the less than's. I'm going, oh, man, what was I thinking? I'm just this old drunk. What, you know, what was I thinking coming here, you know, doing this thing, you know, whoa. I looked down on the ground and there was a nickel. Picked it up, thank God for my sobriety and everything that I have today. All those anxieties just melted away. The sky literally got bluer. I started hearing laughter. I was a dead man walking. I was getting a second chance at life. It was golden. It didn't really matter what happened, right? But I can tell you, God had a different plan. That day I became an All-American swimmer. It was a 3-day meet, and I was All-American all 3 days. And here's a funny story. So the last day, I'm having a blast. I'm just like, I put in the work, and it's just time to just let God do his thing. I'm standing there at the blocks or behind the blocks, and there's this young man next to me, and he looks so nervous. He's ready. I can see, he's like, this guy, he's not having a good time. And I think that me joking around was making it worse, honestly, you know, because I'm just messing around at that point in time. You know what I thought when I was looking at that young man? I felt sorry for him, that he wasn't an alcoholic, that he might never know the pure joy of the fellowship that we have, you know, recovering in this thing. Isn't that funny? You know, looking at this, you know, young man with his whole life, I felt sorry for him. The other men's that I wanted to talk about, I worked at a liquor store for a long time, from the age of 15 to 22, and a lot of things happened there. You know, let's put it this way: it was in Venice. It snowed a lot in Venice. So I took a lot of things that weren't mine, and I knew I had to make that amends. There were actually 3 brothers that owned that store. 2 of them worked there. One was a cocaine addict, did other things. He died of a heart attack, cocaine. There were many times he OD'd in the back of the store where I had to literally put him on left lateral so he didn't aspirate. The other brother, he was a heroin addict, and he finally just committed suicide. The other brother never even worked there. He was a very successful person in life. You know, he was a corporate VP at this large company and had a lot of property. And so anyways, I called him up and I said, George, you know, I need to talk to you. So I met with him, and I'm new, and I said, look, you know, when I was at the store, I took a lot of things that weren't mine. I don't know how much I took, but it was a lot. And I don't have a lot now. It was new. You know, I said, I can't pay it all back now, but what I can do is I'll send you $100 a month until I make it right. And he was very sympathetic because he had lost his 2 brothers to this disease. So he was very sympathetic to what I was saying. He was really curious about what I was saying. And so I started sending him $100. This is 1986, guys. $100 a month when you don't have a job is a lot, right? So I'm sending $100 a month, but more importantly, I'm sending a note on how I was doing in life. And quite honestly, he didn't need the money. He enjoyed the notes. Fast forward 5 years. My daughter's born, Julia. You know, she stole my heart. I couldn't believe that I had anything to do with this beautiful little thing that just arrived in our lives. You know, it's like, I write this note to George, and I'm gushing about my Julia. You know, it's like, oh, boy, you know, it's like, you know, fathers, right? This is 5 years after I had started my amends. So he writes a letter back, and he absolves me of the debt. And in his letter, he said, what you didn't know, Mike, was my mother's name was Julia. And she passed away from cancer. And I named my daughter Julia. He said, spend the money on your Julia. When I was reading that letter, I broke down. Way worse than now. That was it. My last amends. That was it. I could finally forgive myself, completely forgive myself. But it's funny how God is. The story doesn't end there. Fast forward 15 years. I'm a very high-ranking chief officer at a large fire department. I'm at the academy graduation, and I'm the keynote speaker. I'm in full dress uniform. I'm milling around the families before the graduation. There's George. I go, George, it's good to see you. It's like he's giving me the once over because I didn't look like that when I was new, right? Yeah, I was a mess. And he's the guy, it's like, he's like, wow, it's good to see you. You've done well. And I said, George, what are you doing here? And he points to the middle of the graduating class, and there's this young woman. He goes, that's my Julia. Full circle. Full circle. I could go into a few more amends. Like I said, the harder the amends, the greater the outcome. That's been my experience. So if you're holding on to something, make that amends. You are knocking on the door of a spiritual experience. All you have to do is just, trust this process and make these amends. And we got about 10 minutes, so I wanted to open it up to you guys. If you guys have any questions or comments for me. Anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to say?
Hi, Will. Good morning. My name is Sarah, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Sarah.
I just wanted to say I don't know you, but since day one, starting the program a little over 2.5 years ago, I have been reading you, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to it every single morning. So, thank you.
My heart to yours. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Denise, alcoholic.
Hi, Denise.
I've got a question for you. I got a couple 24 hours under my belt, but when you start feeling that stinking thinking that's lying to you, what do you recommend to do?
Help others. Yeah, the checkup from the neck up, I immediately go to a meeting and hunt a newcomer. And you can always find that works for me. It's worked 100% of the time. I think this process absolutely works. So.
I'm Leslie, I'm an alcoholic.
Leslie.
Did I hear you say that your sponsor had you going to, speaker meetings or, doing service early on? You
Yeah.
had 3 months and you were on a panel?
Yeah.
What was this panel?
Thank you for the question. The question was, what panels did I do in early sobriety? This was fantastic. He was very involved in H&I, and we went to a place called USC Medical. It was County General Hospital, where they had a drunk ward. I called them the yellow people. You would go in there, and you could see distended livers, complete jaundice. Their eyes were yellow, their skin were yellow, they were all hooked up to IVs. And we would, me and him, just like it looks like in the picture with Bill and Bob and Bill Dotson, we would go in there and say, we're from Alcoholics Anonymous, would you like to talk? And some of them just, F you, I'm not an alcoholic. They're literally dying of alcoholism. There is no hope. This is terminal, right? They're not going to get a new liver. That's it. They're gone. But most of the time, they're just surprised that someone would even talk to them. And we would sit there and talk for hours. Bedside. Old school. The other thing that, he got me, there's a place in LA called Skid Row. Very low bottom stuff. We would go and do panels at Skid Row. And you can't leave Skid Row without having a huge perspective change. There's people that are fighting over their cardboard boxes, right? And it was just that was a glimpse of what I could have been, where I could have eventually ended up. And another place, this came a little while later, but going to prisons. That was an eye-opener for me, too. going in, the thing slams, doing the panel, and then being able to leave. Here's the irony of it. I sponsor a lot of guys who sponsor a lot of guys who sponsor a lot of guys. I have a great grand sponsee that's, in my life now, and his grandfather came to his first birthday recently and said, I've heard all about you. I wanted to meet you. Turns out this guy was the warden at Chino Prison when I was doing panels there. Life's irony. Any other ones? Anyone? Paul?
Paul, alcoholic. So I'm currently working on my 4th step with my sponsor, and I actually have the sheets that you.
That's awesome.
So I've dealt with a lot of sexual abuse to me, but on this it says, "Whom did I hurt?" Like I feel like I didn't.
Yeah. Great question, Paul. I wish I would have said that during my pitch. Yeah, there is a thing. There's a column on there. People we had hurt on the sexual inventory. When it comes to child abuse, we had no part. We were the victim. But if we continue to play the victim card, we'll always be a victim. That's why I talked about that. How do you forgive the unforgivable? And I had to do that, because I just recognized it's like, nah, I'm not going to let that person owe me anymore. That's it. I'm just going to let it. And it's interesting, Paul, you're going to see if you stick around here that you're going to be able to share these things with others. That so many of us go through these difficult challenges in life. But you know what? We can walk through anything. We can walk through anything. Right? All right.
Kindle alcoholic. I have one, and when you do the 4th and 5th step with somebody, and then you burn what it is, right? Where does that come from? Because the book says we have to refer back to that list. So is that just like
good question.
Interjected like with somebody made that up?
Yeah, very good question.
It?
We burn everything but the people we'd harmed. That's the list we keep. And I tell guys, go home and sanitize that. And if anyone found that list, you don't want to be compromised in any way. Let me give you an example. I steal from Walmart. On my list, I'll put WM and then a $sign. So if anybody sees that, it's not like compromising in any way. Sanitize it. I have had sponsees that didn't want to burn their 4-step, and their ex-wives, their wives' ex-wives, because they blew up their relationships. A girlfriend found one, and she was on the plane home. Poof, So I don't know if there's any reason to hold on to that kind of stuff. And by the way, you can also do other 4-steps, mini 4-steps later on, which I've done many on relationships and work and issues like that as they come up, or just do a 4-step in my head. So, I do. Okay, we got about 5 more minutes. When I was going in high school, there was a guy that was a year ahead of me that I really looked up to. He was one of my best friends, and one of the things, he was a dealer. He used to sell half grams out of his peachy folder, which I thought was pretty cool. Good athlete, really good looking guy. Let me paint this picture. When he was in 11th grade, he dated the woman that was voted best looking at the school. When he was a senior, he dated the woman that was voted best looking in the school. He was that guy that would walk around school, mysteriously. That people just, kind of gravitated towards. And he was one of my best friends. Of course, we partied together all the time. We both became alcoholics. I got sober first, but he got sober a little bit while later. And we were having dinner together, and I'm telling my friend Bob, I said, Bob, in high school, I always envied you, 6'2", blonde hair, blue eyes, really good. Like, you always dated the best looking girls, and and you had that Mustang, convertible Mustang, and you had that studio apartment, and just, I was just always envious of you. And he started laughing. I said, Bob, that's not cool, man. I'm bearing my soul here, and you're laughing. He says, no, you don't understand. I'm laughing because I was envious of you.
Wow.
that I had a girlfriend all through high school that I loved. You know, and that I got good grades without trying. And he told me I was dyslexic and I struggled in school. I never knew that. You know, he had an apartment of his own. Why? Because every night his dad was beating the hell out of him. He had to get out of there to survive.
Oh, shit.
Never judge your insides by other people's outsides. I was doing that all through high school. Unfortunately, he had too many demons. He was in and out of the program for 25 years. Would put time together and he would go out. And at the end, he was homeless. And he literally died in the gutter, homeless. He was in a storm drain. He took off his shirt. It was in Maryland in the wintertime. He had used the shirt as a pillow, and there was an empty bottle of Scope next to him. He aspirated on that was his last drink, which is like what we do, right? He had a 13-year-old daughter and a wife, and they knew how important it was for Bob to be buried in Venice, at least for his ashes to be buried in Venice. So the wife calls me up, says, hey, we're going to come out. We're going to do a little thing. Can you gather some of Bob's friends? We're going to do, sprinkle ashes off the Venice Pier. So her and her daughter that I'd seen since a little baby come out, and I spend the day with Winter, the daughter, and Kendra, the wife, and we're going through Venice, and I'm sharing all these positive stories, and this person that I loved. He was just he would give you his shirt off his back. He was just this amazing person. And everyone loved Bob except for Bob. That was the kind of situation. But, I'm going through the thing I'm telling him, and then we're off on the pier, and Winter starts reading a letter to her dad, and everyone's just crying, and she can't even finish the letter, so she hands the letter to her cousin. Her cousin starts reading it. She can't finish the letter, so everyone's crying. And Kendra was really smart. She said, hey, look, I know you guys want to do your own personal goodbye, so, everyone can take a handful of ashes and dump them off the pier. I can tell you this, is that when we were out on the pier, I noticed that there was a single dolphin swimming around. Dolphins don't do that. They come in pods. They don't stay in one area. And if Bob ever he was a surfer from Venice, a swimmer, if there was ever a spirit animal, it would have been a dolphin, right? It's like we're going, do you guys see that? The whole time, that dolphin stayed right there, man. So I grab a handful of the ashes, and I put it out over, and I couldn't open my hand. And then I heard it. God telling me, you have to let him go. You have to let him go. I had carried so much guilt about not getting him to stay sober that I carried that with me until that point. But what I realized is that God didn't take Bob. The disease took Bob. And if his intense love for his daughter could not keep him sober, what made me think I could? And I was free. I was free. I'm exhausted. I'm going to end with that. Thank you.